Hey everyone. So, if you're stepping into an ESL classroom, it can feel like you're just drowning in this alphabet soup of methods, right? You hear about PPP, TTT, CLT, TBL, it's a lot. Today, we are going to demystify 10 of the most essential methods out there, all to help you build your own personal teaching toolkit. But first, let's start with a quick question. Just imagine for a sec, you've got a class of intermediate students and you write two sentences on the board. How would you go about explaining the difference between them? What's your first instinct? And here they are. I like swimming versus I want to swim. Ah, gerunds and infinitives. It's a classic grammar point, isn't it? We're going to use this exact example as our guidepost to see how all these different teaching methods tackle the very same challenge. Now, what's so interesting here is that how you answered that question, well, it probably reveals a lot about your core teaching philosophy. But hey, don't worry, this isn't a test. The goal here is definitely not to find the one best method. It's about building a really versatile toolkit so you can always pick the right tool for the right job. Okay, let's dive into the first big philosophical divide: structure versus discovery. The main question here is pretty simple. Who's responsible for the grammar rules? Is it the teacher standing at the front of the class explaining everything? Or do the students figure it out for themselves? This slide shows the two paths perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the teacher-led or deductive approach. Think of it as top-down. The teacher gives the rule, then the students practice. On the right, it's the student-led or inductive approach. This is bottom-up. Students get a bunch of examples first, and then they work out the rule. Let's see how they actually work. First up, a total classic: presentation, practice, production, or PPP. It's the perfect example of a teacher-led method. First, the teacher presents the language. Then the students get some very controlled practice, like a worksheet. And finally, they get to produce the language more freely, maybe in a real conversation. It's a nice, clear path from the teacher having all the control to the student becoming independent. A variation on this is test, teach, test, which is super efficient. You start with a little test to see what students already know. Then you teach only the parts they got wrong. And finally, you test them again. That way, no time is wasted on stuff they've already got down. All right, let's flip over to the student-led side. With guided discovery, you don't just give them the rule. Nope. Instead, you give them some data, like this little paragraph. Then you ask these guiding questions. Hey, which verbs here use ing? Which ones use to? The students basically become detectives, finding the pattern themselves. And that's the key. The aha moment comes from them, not from you. We can actually take this even further with something called inquiry-based learning. Here, you just pose one big question and kind of set them loose. They might use texts or the internet to research the answer, and then they present what they found. You've turned your students into active language researchers. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, time for a major shift in philosophy. For this next group of methods, the main goal isn't perfect grammar, it's just successful communication. The message really does matter more than the mistake. And that brings us to a huge one: communicative language teaching, or CLT. In this kind of classroom, it's all about realistic communication. So if you gave your students a task like plan your weekend, they would naturally use phrases like I enjoy hiking or I want to visit the zoo. The teacher's job is just to keep the conversation going, and importantly, you correct any mistakes after they finish talking so you don't break that flow. Now, task-based learning takes this idea a step further. Check out this flow, because it might feel a little backwards at first. Students do the task first. They try to create a survey and interview their classmates. And yeah, they're gonna make mistakes, but then the teacher's lesson is based entirely on the real errors the students just made. The language focus only comes after they've felt the need for it. It's learning driven by necessity. The lexical approach offers a totally different angle. It basically says we don't speak in single words or grammar rules, we speak in chunks. So instead of just teaching the rule for enjoy plus ing, you teach the whole phrase, I can't stand doing something, or I'm thinking of going somewhere. This helps students build fluency way faster by giving them these ready-made phrases they can just plug and play. So, we've seen teacher-led structure, and we've seen communication-first fluency. Our final section is all about modern frameworks. These are less about rigid dogmatic rules and more about flexible ways to design lessons for today's classrooms. A really popular framework is ESA: engage, study, activate. First, you engage the students, get them hooked. Then comes the study phase, where they might analyze the grammar, and this part could be teacher-led or student-led. Finally, you activate the language with a fun, communicative task. The real beauty of ESA is just how flexible it is. You can plug other methods right into its structure. Blended learning is all about using technology to your advantage. It's often called flipping the classroom. Students can learn the grammar rules from a video at home, that's the online part. Then that precious class time is used for what it's best for, active practice, discussions, and getting real-time feedback. And finally, differentiated instruction. This isn't really a method as much as it is a core principle. It's just acknowledging that students in the same class are at different levels. So for the same learning goal, you design different tasks. As you can see here, your beginners might do a simple matching task, while your more advanced students are challenged to write a whole paragraph. Everyone's working on the same grammar, but at a level that's just right for them. So, after all that, we come back to the big question: which method is the best one? Well, the answer is none of them. And, in a way, all of them. Each one has its own unique strength for a specific moment in the classroom. You see, the most effective teachers aren't followers of just one method. They're more like master builders. They understand all these different tools and they combine them to create lessons that are a perfect fit for their students, for that day's lesson, and for their own personal teaching style. Your teaching toolkit is now open. You've got deductive tools, inductive tools, communication-focused tools, and these awesome flexible frameworks. So the only question left is, for your very next class, what's the first tool you're going to reach for?